How's it going? My name is Captain Lavelle. I'm part of the Youngstown Air Force Reserves in Ohio, where I'm a C-130 navigator. And for this video, I'm going to address the time change was implemented and it did not anchor in the organization. So a little bit of background. Like I said, I'm a navigator on C-130s out of Youngstown, Ohio, and I'm a traditional reservist. So for those of you that aren't familiar with traditional reservist, that means I have a civilian job as well as my military job. We fly 1 to 2 nights a week, as well as one UTA weekend a month, and then we deploy approximately every 2 to 2.5 years as of right now. There's also a lot of TDYs mixed in and some awesome trips that we get to go on. So with that said, there's some interesting dynamics that don't necessarily apply to active duty lifestyle. So the example I'm going to give where change was implemented and did not anchor is very applicable to a reservist. And what happened was we had a commander that came in from active duty, and he wanted to implement a new timeline for showing for flights. So the way Youngstown's always done it was 2 hours prior to your flight is showtime. This is a very accommodating schedule for reservists who oftentimes have their day job prior to coming out to fly. It's very simple, and it's the way it always was. Well, he wanted to change this. He wanted to implement a show period that was similar to something he'd done on active duty on a different airframe. We're flying C-130s, and he was on a different airframe. And he wanted to have the loadmaster show 3 hours prior so they could get set up, and the navigators showed 3.5 hours prior so they could plan for more. They could allot more time for planning. Well, that kind of went unsaid, as it had always been with the 2-hour show. I personally know as a navigator I need to show up an hour prior to showtime so I can get done what I need to get done. So back to what he was trying to implement, he wanted a variety of different show times. It was very complicated, but that's what he wanted. And so I'm going to run down the 8 Cotter steps for implementing change and address which ones he succeeded on and which ones he did not. So the first step is to establish a sense of urgency. He succeeded at doing this. Once he explained his vision, he told people that within a month he wants to see change. So for something this drastic, that's definitely a sense of urgency. The second step is assemble a leadership team. He succeeded at this as well. He recruited a handful of different people among the squadron from different crew positions, different ranks, some senior ranking officers, some NCOs. So he succeeded at establishing a good leadership team and explained to them what he wanted to implement and told them to come up with a plan that met his goal. It didn't have to be exactly what he was looking for, but he wanted change. The third step is developing a vision and a strategy. I'm going to say he failed at this from the start because he did not have a simple plan or a vision. What he presented was that we were going to have multiple different show times for different crew positions. That's not simple. The fourth is to communicate the vision again and again and again. He succeeded at this. He made it very clear what he was trying to achieve, yet nobody saw his vision. He still communicated it. Just to reiterate, he came from a different platform as well as a different community altogether, active duty versus now being in reserves. The fifth is empowerment. I'm going to say he failed at this because leadership, the leadership team that was established in the end was shut down. After they presented the plan that everybody agreed on, after getting input from everybody in the squadron, and they gave him a plan that was kind of a meet in the middle type thing, and he shot it down and still implemented his initial vision that he said from the start. So in the end, he did not empower anybody. He just basically disagreed with the plan that was presented to him. The sixth is short-term wins. He obviously failed at this. Could we have affected change over a long-term period? No doubt about it. And with short-term wins, I think we could have achieved a mutually agreed upon timeline that he would have liked to have seen implemented. Short-term wins could have been, hey, everyone will show 2 hours prior, but for this next month, we want the navigators in 3 hours prior, and that's a hard showtime. I think the navigator section would have been open to doing that, considering most of us already do show 3 hours prior. Steps 7 and 8 are not applicable to this scenario because of the failed previous steps in 1 through 6, as mentioned. Develop a vision and strategy that's simple. That did not go into effect, as well as empowering the team, that didn't go into effect. And there's no short-term wins. 7 and 8, though, are consolidate gains to produce more change. When you're trying to implement large change, it's quite a process, and people can get burned out. So it's important to build on those short-term wins. That was not applicable in this case. And then the 8th, anchoring change to the culture. This is Kotter's overarching message, is how to implement change and really anchor it into the DNA of the culture. This obviously was not achieved in the end, and I think this speaks volumes to Kotter's 8-step program. If you can address each of the 8 steps successfully, you'll come up with that end goal of achieving anchoring change into an organization, whether it's on the military side of things or the civilian side of things. Lastly, to address his leadership style, I think it's apparent that he was very authoritarian. He was very autocratic. He did not delegate or embody a true democracy, that's for sure. And in the end, I think this goes to show why being an authoritarian leader is not always the most effective, if ever effective. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video, and look forward to your feedback. Thank you.